Welcome to the Excuse Masters Podcast.
Hey, this is Tim Kaufman. Thank you so much for joining me as I talk to some of the most amazing people on the planet about excuses and why they didn't let excuses hold them back from a plant-based lifestyle. So sit down, buckle up, and hang on as my guests show you how to
Smash excuses.
Okay, Josh Byrd, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you.
So, normally a podcast, we focus the whole thing on your story. So this is a little different. If you could just, in like 5 minutes, kind of summarize what a plant-based lifestyle has done for you to change your life.
Sure. I came from childhood obesity myself. I was very, very big. I was 90 pounds in kindergarten. I was in kindergarten at 4 years old, so I was 90 pounds at 4 years old. I stayed very big throughout my childhood, and in going into high school was the same. I was very, very big. I went to a school that had uniforms, had a polo shirt, and I was so embarrassed how tight even a 2X was in high school that I would wear a overshirt unbuttoned over top of it. And I really didn't get tall until almost graduating high school. Then I shot from 6'1", 6'2", up to 6'5", and that kind of helped my weight to height ratio out. But I just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Fast forward to 2009, when my first daughter Lily was born, and I really kind of started putting things in perspective. I was getting up close to 400 pounds, and I said, I really need to start losing weight and working out. So I started working out, and I was more conscientious of what I was eating, and I still wasn't really losing a lot of weight. And I ended up ballooning up to 420 pounds after I got down to about 380. So for months and months and months of really restricting and watching what I was eating and going to the gym, I lost about 20 pounds, and then I shot up and I gained that 20 plus another 20. And when I really put my mind and said, I don't want Lily to live the way that I lived as a kid and then perpetuate into living that way as an adult, I decided to very conscientiously change everything about the way that I ate, the way I thought about food, the way I treated my body on a daily basis. And that progression led to a plant-based diet. And when I transitioned, I won't forget it, it was right before Thanksgiving. All my friends and my family, and a lot of my family is now plant-based, they all said, right at Thanksgiving, as if, I had to finish that trend by eating turkey and eating all these things. And I said, yeah, it's time to do it. I don't care, what tomorrow is or the next day. So plant-based diet for me was rethinking the way I thought about food, how animals are food in certain parts of the world, sure, but when we live in the society we live in, we have such abundance in plants and that are healthy, and that we don't have to source the cholesterol from, let alone the animal suffering. But let's just talk about health. We don't have to source the cholesterol. We don't have to go to animal-based fats or proteins when we can get everything we need, all the essential amino acids, everything from plants. That being said, when I transitioned, my wife was within a week fully on board. My daughter, naturally, at the time, was between 5 and 6 years old, and which was almost 3 years ago. And she was between 5 and 6 years old, and she said, why aren't you eating steak anymore? And I'd say, it's a cow, and it's not healthy for us. And within a day or two, really, all of her favorite foods that she liked with cheese and all that stuff, there was no craving for it. She didn't care anymore. She chose to do it, which granted, we were saying, this is the way we're going to eat from now on, but she went right along with it. And so it really, it continued to drop weight for me. It allowed me from never running a mile in my life, to starting to run, and I quickly progressed from 1 mile to 3 miles to 7 miles to 10 miles, and it just perpetuated. I went from never riding a bicycle to actually Thanksgiving that year, which was less than a week of being in the plant-based, I rode 35 miles in one stretch. Now, I thought I had done something major, but just a big boost of ego, and knowing that I was feeling better immediately. It was, it's the single greatest, aside from choosing to marry my wife and choosing to have children, it's the single greatest I think, decision I've ever made, and it just perpetuated into this kind of widespreading net that my mom's been caught in now, and my wife, and my two daughters, and I'm very passionate about it. So whenever I get a chance to talk about it, I love to try to show people the way I did it. So anybody can do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, it just keeps it's like a Doppler effect. It just keeps spreading and spreading, and it's super cool to see, especially when you see people that you love, changing over, and they're getting more healthy and they're going to be around longer and have better quality of life. So that is super cool. So, I'm sorry, what refresh my memory about the weight loss. How much weight did you lose doing this?
I was 420 pounds, and I got down to 210 pounds, and now I sit between 210 and 215 because when I got to my lowest at 210, that was still looking at a lot of weighing my foods and trying to count my macros, which for some of you who don't know, are the macronutrients, trying to really count my carbs, fats, and proteins, grams per day. And then when I finally see, I'm just going to eat to satiation. And sometimes I'll even, what McDougall calls eating to the pain, something is so good, we'll just eat a little bit extra. But I maintain, between 210, 215 and from 200 or from 420. So I've lost 410 or 210 pounds.
Wow, that's amazing. Congratulations. That is awesome. Super awesome. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to tell you what I hear this a lot. I hear this a lot. This is probably one of the top 3 excuses when I talk to people. And so I get people all the time say that they care about their health. They know that a plant-based diet is healthy, but unfortunately there's no way they could stick to a plant-based diet because they either travel a lot or they're out of town a lot, for the weeks and weekends. And that's why they could never do plant-based, because they're so out of their element so many times that they just wouldn't be able to stick to it. So my first question is, why do you think I'm asking you to smash that excuse?
Well, traveling is very pervasive in our modern society now. In America, at least, most people that have the means to have an automobile do some substantial traveling at least once per year. And in my PhD student program that I'm in at University of Nebraska, I this past January went for 2 months and taught in India. So I traveled quite a bit, and I lived there for 2 months without my family. They stayed here, and traveling can be tough, but any amount of planning that you put in, any amount, pays off exponentially when the situation arises where you have to have food. So, traveling, yeah, that's going to happen, and life happens, and traveling is not predictable through every nuance of the action. But anything that you can do to get ahead of any problems is the way to tackle a traveling problem.
Right. So preparation is definitely key. But it's when I saw, because I follow you on Facebook, and I saw that you were leaving. How long did you leave the country for?
8 weeks.
So 8 weeks. So that's a long time. And I saw all these things go through my mind when I saw that happen, because I know you lost, so much weight. And sometimes, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but sometimes I feel like, there's a group of us, and I'm always worried because you hear these, crazy stories about people losing all this weight and then they gain it back. And, I know, in my mind, I know it's never going to happen to me, but there's always that little thing, well, is that one thing going to put me back to where I was? And so I can remember seeing your plans to move, and I'm thinking, okay, it's one thing for the food. If I travel to Florida, I still am safe knowing that I can go to a gas station and get bananas or apples. I can go get produce anywhere. But man, to a different country, that's craziness. I don't know what to expect, first of all. But secondly, the one thing that kind of stuck out to me is, I mean, you're a younger guy, and you have a young family, and that must have been a huge emotional thing. And a lot of my food used to come from emotional eating, and I know others did too. So it's a big deal. This is a big deal. And so what I want to ask you next is, can you explain to us some of the challenges, and if it's emotional, and maybe it wasn't emotional, I don't know, and maybe you never had an emotional eating problem, but can you explain to us some of the challenges that you faced, over in India?
Sure. And to preface the India trip, I still have the emotional feelings around food. So when I left to go to India, it really hit me when I got to Newark, New Jersey, because we flew from Nebraska to New Jersey, and then that was a 3-hour flight, and then from New Jersey to Mumbai was a 16-hour flight. And when I got to New Jersey, man, I had this. I was traveling with 3 young ladies that I go to school with that are, if we had a cohort, they would be in it. They're good friends of mine now. And I said, I'm going to run to the bathroom. I'll be right back. And I got as far away from them as I could, and I completely lost it. I called my wife, and I said, I don't know why I did this. I'm bawling in the airport, a huge airport. And I had that level of emotion tied to I'm leaving. At the time, my daughter Lily is 7 because she turned 8 in May, so she was still 7. But my other daughter was, I believe, at the time she was 15 months. And I said, in the scope of her life, I've never been away from my older daughter Lily more than one night. And then my younger daughter Ivy, I've never been away from her at all. And I'm like looking down the barrel of a 2-month long trip full of uncertainties. I'd never even been on a plane, so that was my first experience on a plane, and I'm taking a big one, right? So that kind of stress didn't trigger me to eat. That triggered me. I lost appetite pretty much completely for the flights. I was just torn up. I didn't know what to expect, and but day-to-day stress, mounting stress, still triggers me to. I'll catch myself snacking on like a saltine or something, or a couple of saltines, or a handful of peanuts. I'm like, why? I shouldn't really be hungry, and I realize that it's me still having to deal with that. So. I get that 100%, and I have had that tied in the past really hard, really heavily, and still now it's something I had to conscientiously, evaluate every time I feel like I'm mindlessly eating or I shouldn't be hungry. Am I hungry? I have to really think what's going on up here to make me feel like I need to eat. But that being said, so on the airplane, a lot of people don't fly 16 hours. I'll say most people probably fly a lot less at a time. So that 3-hour flight, it's as simple as, you eat at the airport before you go. And I did that. And if you are hungry, if you fly a lot, I think you probably have a regular appetite because you're used to it. You don't have the, worry like I did. But the big flight. So they were coming around, and they were, and this is still fully English speaking because we're departing from Newark going to India. So this is an American English speaking flight crew, and everything they had milk in it or cheese in it. I mean, every single meal they had, and the only thing I could get was occasionally they'd have a juice, or I could ask for a piece of fruit. Sometimes they'd have it, sometimes they wouldn't, because they wouldn't, break out all their cabinets open in that early of a flight. So it got to be, I think I went about, of the 16 hours, I went 13 hours before I could eat anything because they didn't have anything until breakfast in Mumbai. I got a banana. Once I landed in India, we had a night in Mumbai before we got up and took another domestic flight the next day to another central part of India, Aurangabad, and then we drove to our final destination of Jalgaon, which is right in the center of India. Jalgaon is very rural, and a lot of farmland and big slums. And we were put in a position where we were staying with very, very kind hosts that were a major corporation that had vested interest in bringing up the level of education in the slums. So we had people that were with us most of the time that spoke English. So as we were having to navigate the food, obviously a lot of India is vegetarian, but they still cook with a lot of ghee, which is clarified butter. And they, when you're out on the town, a lot of people, especially they see Americans or foreigners, no matter what, if you're foreign in India, a lot of people try to sell you non-veg food. Chicken is the biggest one. Sometimes you see pork. Not where we were at would you ever see cow. And you would even have to ask, is this non-veg or is it veg? Because that's the biggest thing, is we had to really plan, for me especially, because the other 3, they didn't mind if they had, meat, and I'm not eating it. I'll skip meals before I eat it. And so when I was navigating this very different terrain than I'm used to, in the climate I was in, it was really looking for things that we know are healthy. Bananas grow plentifully in India, and thankfully most of them are organic and non-GMO. And rice is a plenty in India. So when I was there, banana and rice were my two main staples. We did go to some stores that sold nuts, almonds, and things like that, and I would get some of those to take back to my hostel. But there was a time where when we stayed the whole time we were there, we stayed at a live-in school for seventh grade and up through 12th standard, boys and girls. And at the school, because they lived there, they actually served food. And I got so tired of eating the rice and the bananas because everything else had ghee in it. If the rice was yellow, it was full of butter. And if the chapatis, which looked just like a tortilla, if they were glistening, they were painted with ghee after they came out. And I got so tired of eating it, I fasted for 2 days. Now, that's kind of an extreme thing. Not extreme that I fasted, but if somebody said I can't eat plant-based because I travel a lot, I would say, look, especially here, you have, like you said, gas stations have fruit. It may be overpriced, but they have fruit. If you can take and plan taking any kind of nuts with you, taking any kind of baby food squeeze pouches, as long as you get one that's in the date, you could take that with you. Actual major dates are fairly cheap, good source of calories. You don't have to do anything elaborate. Fast food is normally healthy if you eat it as fruit. Beans come with a pop top from Walmart. I know I'm not promoting Walmart, but for sure, 79 cents, you can get a meal on the go and you don't have to worry about that. So if I can go to India for 2 months and navigate the language barrier, the food barrier, not knowing what anything is, certainly somebody could get something here and travel domestically.
Right. Yeah. That was kind of our last question here is tools and stuff. And you're right. Like now that I've been doing this for a while, I always, even in my office, sometimes I'll just take some potatoes and throw them in a drawer. They last forever. And I think the key, and I think you would agree with this, that the key is being prepared. Because two things that always get me: if I'm hungry and unprepared, I'm going to screw up. And really, there's no excuse for it because, like you say, the Goya beans have the pop tops. You don't even need a can opener. And in my mind, if I'm not hungry enough to eat a can of chickpeas, I'm not hungry. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and so briefly, I'll tell you that as a student, I have to go to meetings, I have classes, I help teach class, and I have my research assistantship through the school. I do research with the school and my advisor. So I have to go, I'm on the go a lot. And so my travel may be on a bike for 10 or 15-minute riding, or I may be in a car for 20 minutes or less, but I'm on the go a lot. So if I'm riding my bike, I don't have room for my laptop, my books, my teaching materials, my assessment materials, and a lunchbox. But everywhere I go, I make sure that I've got a microwave at my disposal or somewhere, a sink, where I can at least wash a spoon if I have to take a can of beans. Or if I have a microwave, I throw a potato in my backpack. I'll take it with a paper towel and microwave, and I'll eat a potato. I know that doesn't seem glamorous, and for some people that may be transitioning to a plant-based diet, they're like, I don't want to just take a raw potato and eat a potato whenever I get hungry. But it's really good if you're hungry to have a big purple Japanese sweet potato. They're delicious. So it's just the idea of what you constitute as a meal. Traditionally, you think of how many courses or how many sides. But Tim, on your Facebook, how many times I look and there's a big plate of greens with a bean can on top, and it looks awesome. You cover it in nutritional yeast, and that's really, really good. And it's not hard.
Right. It doesn't have to be hard. I mean, some people like the fancy stuff, and I get it, and that's cool. And we do that once or twice a month. And if I had time, I'd do it more often. But you're right, like potato for me, and if I'm really hungry, man, that potato tastes like, decadent food. It just tastes good because I'm really hungry instead of just eating for entertainment like I used to.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. All right, so give us one more tip before we go because we're really out of time. But give us one more tip for travel. I know you got one more in there.
um, so scout out where you're going. That's one I learned from Rich Roll. He does a lot of travel around the world, and I was listening to his podcast, and he goes, I travel, I get it. He said, I scout out. So if you're going to airport, there's going to be food in the airport for sure. Even a small airport's going to have something. If you're going to travel on the road, a road trip, you can actually look ahead at Google Maps and see what restaurants are on the way. And even a steakhouse, which you know how I would feel about a steakhouse, they've got potatoes. You can order a potato with no butter on it. You can order a salad plain with a potato on the side and put it all together. It's scouted out. It's not just preparing by taking things with you necessarily, but look at your route. If you know you're going somewhere that's within 10 or 15, 20 minutes of a restaurant, look at that restaurant online. There's Happy Cow. It's an app you can download on your iPhone or Droid. Happy Cow tells you with a zip code every vegetarian or vegan. You can actually filter down restaurant in that area.
That's a super useful tool.
Yep.
So we don't go out much, and now when we travel, we kind of got it down to, and I know this is, I don't want to say more advanced, but I'm later on as you are in my journey, and if I go without a meal, it's not the end of the world. Like it used to be full panic, and now it's like whatever, we'll pick it up tomorrow or whatever. But that Happy Cow bailed us out quite a bit, so it's super cool. Listen, thank you so much. This has been awesome, and I know it's going to help a ton of people. And basically, I mean, if you can spend 8 weeks in India, that's just the thought of that kind of freaks me out food-wise, but you did it, and there's no reason why anyone else can't do it, right?
Thanks, Tim, and I'm a huge fan, and thank you so much for allowing me to have this, 20 minutes of conversation. I'm sorry it went over, but I hope if somebody gets something out of it, it was worth it, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and I'm sure they will. So, how cool is that guy, Josh Byrd? I can't imagine going, to another state for 8 weeks and not knowing what I'm going to eat, much less another country where everything literally is foreign. So I guess, through this conversation, if anything, I kind of learned that this is all about prep and planning. And something that Josh couldn't have done, he couldn't look ahead to India what he was going to eat, but we can do that in the States and Canada and stuff. So, he said it himself that if he can do it, anybody can do it. So he chose not to make it an excuse. He chose to make it happen. So I think it's pretty safe to say that with Josh Byrd, this excuse is totally
smashed.